We've all been there, in the middle of a job, everything going smoothly, until boom, you're missing a part. United Refrigeration is your one-stop shop for all your refrigeration needs. Use your computer or smartphone to go to www.uri.com at any time of day or night to check stock on your favorite brands, such as Copeland, Sporlan, Carlisle Compressors, Danfoss, Emerson CPC boards and sensors, Carrel, Hussmann Parts, and K2Therm. United Refrigeration Inc. is home to these brands and many more. Looking for information on refrigerant conversions or refrigerant banking? Quick access links on the homepage can get you to the information you need. All approved accounts are able to see live to-the-minute inventory and pricing. Product not in stock at your local branch? No problem. Use the Nearby Stock feature to find a local branch that does have what you need. Are you looking for a branch address, phone number, or after-hours number? That's all available as well. Just click on the branch locator and search for your local branch. Have a model number and looking for a replacement part? www.uri.com/ARP has a vast list of quick pick replacement parts. Just search for the model number of the equipment you're working on and click the Replacement Parts tab. If you don't have an account, click the Register button and we'll have you online in no time. With more than 400 locations in North America, each United Refrigeration branch is fully stocked for immediate pickup. Our branch employees have in-depth technical knowledge, so we can help you get what you need when you need it. Visit your local store or www.uri.com/ARP today. United Refrigeration Inc. has all your solutions down cold.
The Sporlan division of Parker Hannifin Corporation is sponsoring this podcast. Sporlan is the leading manufacturer of HVAC&R components. Using quality materials and craftsmanship, Sporlan maintains a commitment to innovation, manufacturing excellence, service, and support for its customers since 1934. The company is known for its catch-all filter dryers, thermostatic expansion valves, solenoid valves, pressure regulating valves, suction filters, electric valves, controllers, supermarket monitoring solutions, chemicals, smart service tools, ZoomLock Max Press to Connect, and ZoomLock Push to Connect refrigerant fittings. If folks want to learn more, what do they do?
You can go to sporlan.com.
I guess that's Jim and John for Sporlan signing off.
Hello guys, this episode is brought to you by Fieldpiece. Fieldpiece's next generation of vacuum pumps will cut down on evacuation time and make oil changes on the fly a breeze. They are lightweight, durable, and feature 4 inline ports plus a large oil reservoir. Get pumped about these 3 new Fieldpiece vacuum pumps available at distributors now. Learn more at fieldpiece.com or follow us on social media at Fieldpiece Products. Thanks again, and thanks for listening.
This uplifting cinematic experience.
I've got something important to tell you, Matt.
The big story is...
Dig this and dig it deep.
Hey, good effort. Way to go, way to go.
Dude, don't encourage him.
You assholes know I'm being sarcastic, right?
I've been called the songbird of my generation.
Holy shit.
I'm holding in a huge miss, so could you get to the point?
Terrible! Awful! I hated it!
War's over, man. Wermer dropped the big one.
Bloody psychopath.
High-functioning sociopath.
Yet I never thought I'd see the day when 2 such highly reputable mischief makers as yourselves douse their drawers at the side of a mall security guard.
I see you got fat.
The force is strong with this one.
What are you, 8?
You're waking the neighbors up!
You still look like a 15-year-old girl, but not hot.
Yeah, and then next thing, guys,
when cases ice up, you got to figure out why. You don't want to just de-ice the case and leave. Okay. And this is something I've seen guys, just newer guys, miss a lot is defrost heaters. Okay. Just because a defrost heater isn't pulling any amps does not mean it's bad. Please get your meter out and check. Now, I've seen a plethora of defrost heaters that are bad, that are getting written up that aren't bad. And here's what kills me is a guy will write up both the front and rear heater. The chances that both the front and rear heater are both bad at the same time are pretty rare. So if you don't have amp draw on the front and rear heater, and you got amp draw on the drain heater, you probably have some kind of wiring issue. And now this is specifically in regards to Hill Phoenix, where they put the relays on top of the case that kill the front and rear heater off of Clixon. Now, those relays fail all the time, and they will fail like missing a phase. So it'll have 3-phase defrost, 2 phases of power. You'll have single-phase power going to the rod heater up front, but you'll have nothing in the back or the front coil. So get out there and actually make sure there's power at those defrost heaters. So you want to actually check them, make sure the relays are bad. And same thing with all the CO2 cases at Walmart. So like the Husband ones, I just seen this the other day. Somebody condemned a heater. Another company condemned the heaters in the case, said they weren't working. Well, there's a relay in there that kills. You're an asshole, Brett. There's a relay in there that kills the defrost heater power. And it kills it. It's a time delay relay. It kills it for 15 minutes. So it makes the case pump out for 15 minutes for the heaters to come on. Well, guys get overzealous and they don't wait for the relay to time out. They start de-icing the case. And next thing you know, the case turns out and they never see the heaters actually working when they were. It just was waiting for that 15-minute pump out time.
Also, make sure that your drain pan heater is actually working properly. I know we've been bit in the ass, and I've talked to a bunch of people across the country that have had the same issue. Sometimes, depending on how the case controller is set up, it will turn on the drain pan heater as soon as it goes into defrost, the way it's supposed to. But something, whether it be the fan relay might be connected to that in order to switch it from fan to pan. Sometimes you rely on a amperage in order just to turn off a relay, but typically programmers follow the sequence of operation that a unit should do, right? So, we're going to shut off the fan power as soon as it goes into defrost. Well, on a Hussmann case, that's a severe problem because it uses the same voltage for the fans as it does the pan. So you'll basically have a pan heater that'll be 120 volts. You'll have a fan that's 120 volts. But what they'll do is during defrost, the case controller will actually kill the power for the actual fans, which means when it does finally go into defrost and the electric that's ran to the defrost heater will basically activate that relay and then switch the relay to go from fan power to pan power. But the problem is the case controller already shut off the power that was supposed to be, energizing the fan. And I've seen that happen a multitude of times on the XM678s, where they just, they didn't, they programmed it incorrectly, where it was basically killing the power, and it just, you'll see it come on at first, and then you won't ever check it again. And then lo and behold, maybe a quarter of the way through the defrost or halfway through, it starts automatically just, shutting it off and turning it on. And that needs to be on all the time. Otherwise, any of the water that might be falling off that coil will refreeze, and then you're going to be shit out of luck.
Yeah, Husband's never heard of that before. You're the first one to say anything.
All right. They said that?
I'm sure they said that to you.
No, I wasn't involved. I basically went there and it was like, this is your problem. And they're like, well, it's an S3C. I'm like, then you're going to have either Novar reprogram it or Sporlan reprogram it. You know, right.
It's a manufacturer's, rep. It's their first training. We've never heard of this before. You're the first one to complain. But yes,
I've heard that a lot this year.
The drain pan is a huge issue, and then same thing with coils, guys. Make sure that when you got coils icing up, make sure that you're actually draining good. And I've seen a lot of coils here lately, especially new stores where guys are missing them. They're icing up the pans. Every one of these Heatcraft coils, I've had to cross break the pans at them when we do startup because they hold water.
Wait. Say that one more time. You've had to do what to it?
We've had to cross break the drain pans because they're literally holding water. The coils will be mounted level and they'll be 100% perfectly level, and front to back to sides, they're holding water on the ends of the coils. So what we've had to do is basically I hang my fat ass off the fucking drain fitting for a second and let it pop. And then once it pops, there's enough slope now in the drain where it actually drains properly.
Maybe they should just let the electricians just hang the electrical from the drain pan. They
drill the relief holes on the one side, but the other side doesn't get to drain through the whip anymore. Be surprised how often that happens. But no, I'm being serious. So these coils are holding water on the sides, and it's the medium temp coils, and they're icing up from the bottoms because that water sits there, then freezes because it's getting cold air blowing on it. It freezes, and then you have a drain pan iced up in a dairy cooler, and you want to put a bullet in your brain at that point because by the time the customer calls it in, it's usually about 13 inches protruding out of the back of it. And it just happened today on a Friday at 9:00 at night.
Man, that's one of the only things I really miss about industrial refrigeration. Supermarket refrigeration, there's no redundancy, right? It even if it was broke, it needs to be fixed last week. Where industrial, you got one evaporator iced up. Well, you got 60 more in that room, sir. I'll be there Monday.
Sure, it'd be nice to have a little bit of redundancy, but nobody ever heard of that before. We can't even get working condensers.
I honestly can't even believe that we were putting on a training class and someone asked, is there any sort of vapor recovery for CO2? So, what they're saying is if you would have a relief pop, it would go, instead of releasing to the atmosphere, it would go to a tank that would hold that pressure. But I don't understand why they don't even spend the money. They're going to complain about how much CO2 they lose, but yet, we could have spent an extra, 15 or 20 grand and installed a natural gas generator with a single condensing unit for that same reason.
They complain about us, but they don't want to spend the extra money. Or these stores with these hot gas racks, or these stores with these, for example, Aldi in Hill Phoenix, there's reliefs in the low temp and medium temp suction headers. Why the hell would you vent those to the atmosphere instead of venting them to the flash tank? Vent them to the flash tank. Let them blow into the flash tank. The flash tank reliefs are at 600 pounds. Why are you going to blow off a relief on the medium temp suction that you could blow into the flash tank?
Yeah, it doesn't even make any sense because, basically, if it did do that...
You want to know why it doesn't make any sense? Because it's going to cost an extra $4 for somebody to bend up some tubing and tie in a check valve.
They do that on regular DX systems. If they have a secondary relief before it goes to the atmospheric relief, where the high-low bypass, where basically you take that hot vapor coming off the receiver, and it just gets thrown right in the suction. Because I'd rather have a high pressure suction than I would losing gas, right? And then at that point, like, you could do something creative where you basically then, if you are that high on the discharge and it's not registering, as soon as it registers that it's releasing some kind of pressure into that line, then it shuts down the low temp compressors, because the CO2 rack can run independently, just run the medium temp, doesn't need the low temp to be running.
This is back to the basics.
You brought up CO2.
No, I didn't. You did.
Can't prove it.
So, all right, guys, back to the basics. Now that Brett's, often is like just down the rabbit hole, chasing the rabbit.
I like Alice in Wonderland.
You would. So we went over the condensers, guys. You're throwing your hands on the drop legs, checking the airflow, cleaning them, and now onto the case. I mean, is there air blowing in the case? Huge thing. Like, is that air like part of Brett's triangle thing? Is there air blowing in the case? Just because that case has been there for 10 years doesn't mean that there isn't air blowing into the case and causing issues. I mean, it may not be the immediate issue, or if they're having product temp issues, I mean, it could still be an issue that you guys need to be aware of. Just look around, look at the HVAC vents, make sure something's not blowing in there. Make sure there's not D-strap fans in there blowing at you. Make sure that there isn't air just like pouring in there. And just because something has been that way for 10 years doesn't mean it's right.
It doesn't also mean that it's wrong. Yeah, I mean, so maybe you guys won't agree with me, but I never, I'll listen to the customer's complaint, because a lot of times he'll give you secrets unbeknownst to him. Like, he'll tell you something where all of a sudden you're like, oh, well, all right, that makes sense. And, it gets you closer. But I never read anyone's tickets. I don't care. I don't care what the last guy did. I treat every single call like it's a brand new call, because a lot of times you'll get blinders on you. I've done this before and wasted hours. Someone told me a certain case was on a certain, group on a glycol rack, and I listened to him, and he was wrong. And I literally wasted, I think, 4 or 5 hours because I was under the assumption that, this guy wouldn't lie to me. No, just don't listen to anybody.
I'm the same way. Like, I don't care what the last guy did. I don't care if it was even one of my guys, because here's the deal. If I'm there, it's because somebody didn't fix it. I want to go into every call with an open mind. We have a couple of guys. They literally will get their truck. They'll get the call. The first thing they do is hit the customer logbook on the phone, and they start looking through it. Oh, so and so was here. Oh, he just worked in this case. He said that there was product blocking the low temp case. There was product blocking the airflow, on the upper shelf. Well, that's not going to make a frozen food freezer, run warm. So lo and behold, he goes there and he says, oh, look, there's product blocking the airflow on the shelf. There's stuff all the way to the honeycombs. Guy goes there, tells him to move the product. He moves a bunch of the product back. Well, the case comes down to temp. Well, lo and behold, there was a Danfoss TXV just bleeding through the suction to the equalizer line. And when all the doors were open, they put a bunch of load on the case. And now the expansion valve actually opened up because the bulb got warm enough, and it started to, cool the case back down. But then he left, and it went right back into alarm. Had he actually looked at the case, objectively, and seen that, okay, yeah, the superheat's like nothing, but I'm not cooling because the equalizer line is frosted up and it's just blowing into the suction.
So one of the things about those Danfoss expansion valves, I don't know what it is, man, but if they're clamped down fairly low, where you're trying to maintain a higher superheat, I've seen where they start bypassing. And as soon as I open it up to, adjust it back to the way it should be, whatever superheat the case needs to be, it starts feeding fine. You have any Any experience with that? Hey guys, here's the second question for July. What temperature does the solenoid engage on the demand cooling module? Email your answer to arpgiveaways@gmail.com. Thanks. Today's episode is sponsored by the new Reefer Shield differential pressure monitor from Westermeyer Industries. When the filter element of your coalescing oil separator is contaminated, it can hurt your system's performance and efficiency. But how do you know when it's time to replace the filter? Wait too long to service the filter, and you could end up with nasty filter blowout. But replacing too often can be a waste of time and money. The answer is installing a differential pressure monitor. The new Refresh Shield RDP-01 differential pressure monitor is available now with Westermeyer Industries. To find out more, email sales@westermeyerind.com. Once again, that's sales@westermeyerind.com. Look for the new pressure differential monitor, available now.
Those valves are either like on point, like they hold like 0.2 of a degree of superheat, or they hunt all over the place or don't feed at all.
Have you? So I'm talking about, if anyone doesn't know, the Danfoss. They look like they're silver. Danfoss states that you don't need to wrap those expansion valves, even with even with like if you're doing a regular standard valve that's not rebuildable. They're saying that you don't have to wrap it, which I find amazing because your power head is directly welded onto that valve. So if you have a broken bulb, you're kind of shit out of luck where you got to just replace the whole thing. Have you ever had to replace one of those? I mean, do they brazen as easy as what they say?
I've never put one in, to be honest with you. I rip it out and put a Sporlan one in every time.
Okay.
So, I mean, yeah, just making sure of like issues like that. Like, don't look at the logbook. Don't look at what the last guy did. Okay, and then guys, if you are going to call for help, say you're a newer guy, you are going to call for help. Please check, the basic things first. Make sure you have power. Make sure you have control power. Make sure you've gauged up and you know your saturation temperatures, your suction saturation, your saturated condensing temperature. Make sure you've checked all the fans are running. Make sure you check you have enough refrigerant in there, whether it's got a receiver level or if you're on a single unit and you're just looking at a sight glass. Make sure you have enough refrigerant in there. Make sure you have your liquid temps. So when you call this guy, whoever you're calling, your supervisor, your foreman, you're waking Brett up at 2:00 in the morning, make sure that you have all this information so you can give this guy to him. I mean, because generally who you're probably calling is probably getting calls from other guys. So the more precise you could be with all this information, then the better off you could be. I don't know how many times I get guys call me and they're like, yeah, I didn't check that yet, or I didn't check anything yet, or I don't have any of that information. I haven't got my gauges out yet. Don't call for help until that's all done.
Yeah, absolutely. If you want to piss someone off, first off, don't call them from the van before you even got there. Don't try to driver's seat diagnose. You're gonna get tunnel vision. You're gonna start going down the wrong rabbit hole, and it's not going to bode well for you. Also, like you just said, don't call with no information. Okay, that's a really fast way to get hung up on. And make sure that you check before anything that whatever you're using is calibrated, whether it be pressure, whether it be temperature. Make sure that stuff is spot on, because the worst thing in the world is wasting your time taking down crap information. Once again, I've said this a bunch of times. You give me crap information, you get a crap diagnostic. And
So one check here real quick. Like you talk about, checking that stuff. Check your meter leads. Every time I use my meter, I throw it on ohms and I ohm out the meter leads. I can't tell you how many times I've seen guys, chasing their tail around a problem, and one of their meter leads is bad because they wrap it around the meter instead of properly storing it. they wrap it around the meter and throw it in a bag, and the wire breaks, and they're looking for a problem. And every time they move the meter, it intermittently, makes again, and they're chasing this ghost voltage problem when it was really just a bad meter lead.
Yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree with all that. I mean, plus it's just a safety thing, right? That's why, like, there are some guys out there that love no loss fittings. And I've had at least 3 calls where, those no loss fittings ended up burning somebody. Guy calls me up and says, Brett, this doesn't make any sense. I don't understand. I was checking out the rack. And I said, first off, before you're going to give me any pressures, did you make sure everything was calibrated? Yeah, it's calibrated. And yeah, it was calibrated right at 0, but it wasn't calibrated at the pressure that it was reading. So he basically is giving me all this information. He said, well, the rack's set for, 50 pounds, but I'm getting 30 at my case. And I'm trying to figure out what the hell he's talking about. It was only one. It wasn't like it was a dual suction group, rack. It wasn't, it was just one medium temp rack, one suction set point and electronic EPRs. And what he's stating was a physical improbability. You couldn't be physically lower than the rack unless something shut off and you were bleeding a crap ton of pressure there. And basically his no loss fittings were what was causing him not to get the full amount of pressure that was in the suction line to his sensor. So he was fighting with this thing for about 4 hours before, like, I didn't know if he was lying to me. What he was telling me wasn't making sense. So I had to drive out there and be like, your gauges are messed up. So we took the no loss fitting off and threw it on there, and lo and behold, it was right after. So I'm very apprehensive about using them. So I'm just sharing my experience so that doesn't happen to you.
I refuse to use those things.
Yeah.
I refuse to use those things. I don't want anything to do with them. I would rather just have normal fittings. I honestly like probes better. I think a probe is much better for that. Get way less issues for that. But the other thing is, guys, just, if it starts spraying out, let it go. Find a ball valve. Don't put your hands there.
You could lose fingers if you try to be a superhero. I mean, the only thing you do at that point is you make, as long as it's safe as far as the amount of refrigerant spewing out. If it's safe enough to stay in the motor room, find out where you can isolate it and just wait for the refrigerant to bleed down.
This goes to another point, Brett. Like, I'm big on this. Like, if I go to a store I've never been to before, I always look around. I spend like 5 to 10 minutes looking at the rack. So say the customers, they want me there for some ice cream doors, yada, yada, yada. I walk in there. I always go to the motor room. If I've never been there, I always go to the motor room and I check it out. And I'm looking for a couple things. I'm looking for the exit. Jesus. I'm looking for the exit. How I'm getting out of the room if something were to happen. And then I'm also looking for the main ball valves. So I'm looking at the rack. I'm looking at the rack piping, just see how everything's laid out, seeing what kind of receiver it has. If it's EnviroGuard. I'm going through this, just looking over the general rack. But I'm also at the same time looking at the main ball valves. Where's that receiver inlet ball valve? Where's the receiver outlet ball valve? Where's the ball valves killing the store? Where's the ball valves killing the condenser? So that way, if there is an emergency situation, you know what ball valves you need to hit. You want to save as much gas as you can. So if you could isolate the receiver and the condenser, you're going to save a ton of gas, and you could run out of the room, hit all the switches, and in the compressors, you could probably isolate that rack fairly quickly. Don't stay there if you don't know where it is. I mean, you're just going to be fumbling around.
And it doesn't take long before that refrigerant hits you. I'm not talking like ammonia. I'm talking about straight up, HFC, HCFC. It doesn't matter. Like, that shit will hit you quick. I walked into a walk-in where we had a leak. We weren't aware of it at that point, and I was in there for about 5 minutes before the guy that I was working with showed up a little bit because he went to go check in with the manager. And within that 5 minutes of the time that I walked in the box, from the time that he got there, all of a sudden it hit me like a ton of bricks where I started feeling lightheaded as shit. And I was like, we need to get out of here now. And then I literally just sat down outside the box. He's like, you all right? I was like, yeah, I was just getting really dizzy because oxygen was starting to get displaced by the refrigerant. And I was getting the spins.
Yeah. So we actually had we were doing a gas conversion one day, and we were inside of a rack in the box house, like enclosed rack house inside of a store. And we had an apprentice. He's a great journeyman now. We had an apprentice changing relief valves on a relief valve tree. And the way that Hill Phoenix mounted this was extremely janky, and it was in a really bad spot. And I told him, I looked over, I go, hey, make sure you use a holdback on there. Oh, I didn't look over, and he had the channel locks backwards. And he had a pipe wrench on there. Well, I was at the controller programming something, and there was 4 other guys in there changing out ball valves. And it was it lasting on a Friday we were doing before the gas changeover the next week. He snapped off the fucking 3-way valve on the receiver. This thing fucking shot out, hit the fucking ground, put a dent in the steel cabinet ground, hit the fucking ceiling, put a hole in the ceiling, came back down, went through the box of parts, and all of a sudden the entire room just went white. So I'm dragging the 2 other apprentices out the one door. My buddy's dragging the other 2 out the other door, throws them on the ground. I hit the purge on the side, and we get the exhaust fan going, and 3 of us run back inside. When we grab I grabbed the receiver ball valves, he grabbed the discharge ball valves, and the other guy grabbed the drop leg ball valves. And we just kill all the switches and then let it all dissipate.
Fudge.
Yeah. And it was a Friday. It was like 1 o'clock.
I've never had a motor room where it was so bad that I couldn't see. I haven't ever had one of those.
It was instant. Like as soon as we heard the pop, it came right out. It was a 3/4 inch fitting. It came right out of this fucking fitting out of the receiver. Just the whole room, just pure white.
Is that so? There's a couple different styles, right? So you have the one that actually has a Rotolock fitting on it. You'll have a different one that could be
so Rotolock.
Would you let me finish?
Fuck off.
threaded directly into the receiver, or the ones that are has a fitting that's threaded on there when it's just a piece of copper coming off.
Yeah, this was a Rotolock, and he snapped the whole fucking Rotolock off.
What did you do?
I had a Rotolock in my van.
Oh, and you lucked out.
I always keep 5/8, 7/8, and 1.125" Rotolocks in my van. Always. I use them all the time. Like especially the 5/8, which would be an 1.25" Rotolock. That is a super common valve on racks.
Trying to remember the one that I used to keep all the time.
But yeah, that thing fogged out the entire room like instantly.
Oh, I had a Union. I had a 5/8 Union Rotolock that I kept. Same thing. I think I had one for inch and 3/8 for the most common ones that break, right? So when you're changing out a compressor on a vapor injection rack, usually the solenoid where it connects up on there, that usually is rusted to crap, and usually ended up twisting the copper. It's so bad trying to loosen it up. And then the big one that I had was for the compound compressors on the discharge line, because I don't know how many times we try to loosen that up to get the discharge to swing out a little bit so we can get the compressor out easier.
He was always suction with me. The suction never would come off.
Really?
Yeah. So if you could down one of those, don't be a jerk. PB blast the shit out of them when you condemn it. So that way the guy that goes there has a chance. But have you ever done the sledgehammer method with a rotolock?
I mean, where you just kind of hit it on either side and try to get it rotating.
So yeah, 2 sledgehammers, hit them opposite ways, and generally you could bust those things loose that way.
No, I've had one discharge line bust on me, but I mean that's not saying, we take over stores and we're wondering why this one compressor won't keep running, and it goes off on discharge pressure, but there's no spikes, and lo and behold, you see that the discharge line is almost twisted shut because they were trying to loosen it up or tighten it up, whatever the hell they were trying to do, and it's just destroyed. And it's not fun. The other thing that I'm amazed about is the copper that they have bent for those things. Do you have any recommendations for like a very large copper bender? Because I mean, obviously, you can only go up to a certain size for like a hand bender. I think they make a 3/4 one that's big enough that you can do by hand. What do you do when you get up into those bigger sizes, Kev?
Benders. Gear benders.
What are those?
Like they're gear driven benders.
Oh,
like
okay. I've never seen one.
I've seen a guy gear bend a piece of 2 1/8.
I'm assuming I mean, not that you're gonna have one on site, but like what's that?
You have to anneal the shit out of it.
Really?
Yeah. The problem with the conduit one, it's the radius is too tight. It ends up kinking the copper.
Really?
Yeah.
I think we talked to Nathan, I think, about this, and he had said, I don't know if he used a company in order to do it. Like he can, there's a company somewhere where they can, specially bend that copper for him, like to because he does a lot of that.
I know Hill and Kaiser can, because I had a rack rebuild project, and Kaiser Warren actually bent all the 90s or the 45s for the Carlisles. They bent all those for us. They sent them. Like they had all the bends. We just had to cut them down because they measured them all wrong. But they had all the bent. Go ahead.
Explain to me why we can't use 45s in refrigeration, but they do it all the time. Huh?
Sam's actually approved us to use 45s in those compounds because we weren't going to be able to get the bends in time. And they said, go ahead and use 45s.
But like, for argument's sake, like 99% of standards say, no 45s in refrigeration piping, but I've seen like 45s from the factory, like on a rack, and I'm like, well, I guess they're not following that. Like, I don't understand. Like, I don't know if they're making them longer radius, or if they're bending it, it's okay.
Look at all the Armaflex. We're not allowed to slide Armaflex, and you look at every rack or slid Armaflex everywhere.
Slid.
Like, they slid it over a 90.
Yeah.
Instead of making it 3-part. Look at half the racks out there. This shit's all slid.
Yeah, agreed.
You're also supposed to purge, and like when you open a rack up and there's a pound of fucking dirt in it when you first get it, It's do as I say, not as I do.
I got you.
They're also supposed to not have any leaks, and when you send something, it's like half put together. I can keep going for days on this.
I know.
Or you get the IOU.
Basic refrigeration. We're going back to basic refrigeration.
All right, we're gonna end this one for tonight. We'll, when Brett doesn't go off on his, diatribe of like random things.
Tell you want, it's useful information. All right, guys, have a good night.